They had heard rumors about the German Tiger, a monster on tracks, but no one expected to see one intact, and certainly not to uncover the shocking truth hidden beneath its thick armor. Late April 1943. An olive grove near Tunis, Tunisia. The war was drawing to its brutal close in North Africa. The ground was still littered with burned-out vehicles and broken helmets, silent witnesses to months of fighting. Among the twisted trees, Allied reconnaissance units stumbled upon something extraordinary. At first, they thought it was a mirage, a massive steel beast resting in the shade, its long gun pointing into nothing. Dust clung to its yellow armor like dried blood. The crew was nowhere to be seen. No fires, no smoke, just stillness. When the soldiers climbed up its hull, they realized what they were standing on, a German Tiger I, intact, functional, and abandoned. To Allied intelligence, this wasn't just a lucky find, it was a miracle. For months, rumors about the Tiger had spread across the deserts of Tunisia like wildfire. Stories of shells bouncing harmlessly off its thick armor, of entire platoons destroyed by a single tank that seemed immune to fear or damage. To many Allied soldiers, the Tiger was not a machine, it was a legend, a monster born from German engineering that turned every battlefield into its hunting ground. The arrival of the Tiger. The Tiger I, officially designated Panzerkampfwagen VI OS E, made its combat debut not in North Africa, but on the Eastern Front in late 1942. Soviet forces at Leningrad were the first to face it and the first to be terrified by it. Its 88mm KWK-36 gun could destroy a T-34 or KV-1 at over 2 kilometers, long before those tanks could even fire back. The weapon's power, combined with its nearly impenetrable armor, gave birth to a new kind of fear, one that the Germans were eager to export. By late 1942, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, struggling to hold the Afrika Korps together under relentless Allied pressure, desperately requested the new Tiger tanks. He needed something, anything, that could turn the tide of a losing campaign. The request was granted, but sending such a complex machine across the Mediterranean was a gamble. Only a small number of Tigers, fewer than 20, would ever reach North Africa, carried on precious ships through seas patrolled by Allied aircraft and submarines. First Blood, Tunisia, 1943. When they arrived, the effect was immediate. In January 1943, the first Tigers rolled off transport ships near Tunis and entered combat during Operation Frühlingswind, supporting the German 10th Panzer Division. Allied Shermans and Churchills soon met them in battle and were obliterated. Tank crews reported their shells bouncing uselessly off the Tiger's frontal armor. Even at close range, 75mm guns couldn't penetrate. Allied tankers described a sense of helplessness, like being trapped in a nightmare. Then came Kasserine Pass, a name that would live in infamy. In February 1943, Rommel's counterattack drove deep into the inexperienced American lines. Tigers led the charge, shrugging off hits that would have destroyed any other tank. Reports from the battlefield spoke of Allied shells ricocheting like pebbles off steel walls, while the Tigers returned fire with devastating precision. In the words of one US tanker, "You don't fight a Tiger, you just try to survive it." That single sentence captured the psychological warfare the Tiger waged as effectively as any gun. Soldiers began calling it Tiger phobia. The cracks beneath the armor, yet behind its terrifying image, the Tiger carried its own curse. Its armor made it nearly invincible, but also incredibly heavy. At 57 tons, it was prone to mechanical failure. The complex Maybach engine strained in the desert heat. Tracks broke, gearboxes seized, and engines overheated. For every Tiger that reached the front line, another sat immobilized, waiting for spare parts that would never come. Its range was poor, its mobility worse, and its appetite for fuel insatiable. Logistics officers joked bitterly that the Tiger didn't fight battles, it consumed them. Even Rommel himself grew frustrated. "Magnificent weapon," he wrote, "but too few, too fragile." The myth of invincibility began to crack, though few on the Allied side would realize it until much later. Retreat and abandonment. By April 1943, the Axis position in North Africa had collapsed. The Afrika Korps, outnumbered and cut off from supplies, began a desperate retreat toward Tunis. Among the units left behind was Tiger 712, belonging to the 2nd Company, Schwer Panzerabteilung 504. Its crew, under heavy pressure and facing fuel shortages, made a fateful decision: abandon the tank. But unlike most withdrawals, they left Tiger 712 almost untouched. No demolition charges, no attempt to destroy it. The crew simply vanished into the olive groves. When Allied engineers inspected the machine, they were stunned it was fully operational. Inside, they found maps, logbooks, ammunition, and tools. Everything was intact. To Allied intelligence, this was a gold mine. They could now study every bolt, every inch of armor, every mechanical secret of Germany's most feared weapon. The fearsome Tiger, once the symbol of German might, now stood silently under Tunisian sun, conquered not by battle, but by breakdown and retreat. Its capture marked a turning point. For the first time, the Allies understood that even Germany's most formidable machine had weaknesses. The myth had met reality, and in that olive grove near Tunis, Tiger 712's stillness whispered a quiet truth. Even monsters can die of exhaustion. Early June 1943. The war in North Africa was over. Axis forces had surrendered, and the desert fell silent. But far from the battlefield, a new mission began, one that would carry the ghost of Rommel's mighty Tiger across oceans. The Allies had captured Tiger 712 intact, and High Command knew exactly what to do with it. The order was clear: ship it to America. What had been a fearsome predator in the olive groves of Tunisia was now treated like a sacred relic. Every inch of it, its gun, its armor, its transmission, held secrets the Allies were desperate to unlock. But moving a 57-ton German tank was no small feat. Transportation challenge. Allied engineers in Tunisia faced the monumental task of moving the Tiger from its resting place to the nearest port. It had to be done carefully. Too much stress, and the tank's fragile transmission could break. They disassembled parts of the turret, drained fluids, and reinforced the undercarriage. A convoy of trucks and cranes escorted the beast across bomb-cratered roads to the port of Bizerte. Soldiers who saw it for the first time stopped and stared in disbelief. Even defeated, the Tiger radiated menace. Its thick armor glowed dull gold under the Mediterranean sun, like a fossil of war. When it finally reached the harbor, dockworkers watched as the massive hull was hoisted onto a British transport ship bound for the United States. The crane strained under the weight, cables creaking as if protesting the burden. And so, in the summer of 1943, Tiger 712 crossed the Atlantic not as a conqueror, but as a captive. Arrival at Aberdeen. On a misty morning weeks later, the ship docked in New York. U.S. Army ordnance officers oversaw the unloading with near reverence. A convoy then carried the tank south to Aberdeen Proving Ground, Maryland, the heart of American weapons testing. Awaiting its arrival was a man who had been following the Tiger's legend for months, Colonel George B. Jarrett. Known for his unrelenting curiosity and encyclopedic knowledge of enemy weapons, Jarrett had built Aberdeen into a museum of captured war technology. But the Tiger was unlike anything he had ever seen. Beside him stood General Gladion M. Barnes, the brilliant engineer who oversaw U.S. tank development. To him, the Tiger represented both a challenge and an opportunity to learn, adapt, and ultimately surpass. When the tank rolled into Aberdeen under its own power for the first time, mechanics cheered. "It's alive," one of them muttered, half-jokingly. Jarrett simply nodded, notebook in hand. "Let's find out what makes it tick." First impressions. Disassembly began at once. Engineers circled the Tiger like archaeologists around a newly unearthed ruin. They marveled at the craftsmanship, the precision-machined gears, the intricate suspension, the flawless welding seams. Every component bore the mark of a nation obsessed with engineering perfection. One American technician reportedly remarked, "It's like they built a Swiss watch, then wrapped it in armor." The gun, the legendary 88mm KED-UK-36, was tested on the range. Its accuracy was astounding, its penetration unmatched. At 1,500 meters, it could punch through any Allied tank. Even the turret's rotation system was smooth and precise thanks to hydraulics that rivaled anything the Americans had built. Yet, as the days went on, admiration began to turn into concern. This machine was magnificent, but it was also overcomplicated. Every part required special tools, rare materials, and hours of maintenance. In the field, such precision could become a curse. The fuel revelation. To test the Tiger's mobility, engineers fueled it up and set it loose across Aberdeen's test track. For a few minutes, it performed beautifully. The massive engine roared, treads biting into the dirt. But after less than an hour, gauges began to drop. The tank was devouring fuel at an astonishing rate. They refilled it, and the same thing happened again. After multiple tests, the data was conclusive. The Tiger burned nearly 500 liters of fuel for every 100 kilometers. In battlefield conditions, that number climbed even higher. Colonel Jarrett stared at the figures, then at the massive steel machine before him. "It's not a tank," he muttered. "It's a refinery on tracks." The engine, though powerful, was inefficient and prone to overheating. The transmission required constant attention. Even small maintenance tasks demanded a full crew and specialized equipment. The Tiger's greatest weapon, its size and strength, was also its Achilles heel, the strategic realization. When the test results reached the Pentagon, they caused a quiet but significant shift in Allied thinking. The Tiger was not unbeatable. It was unsustainable. Germany's industry, already strained by Allied bombing, could barely keep up with the demand for steel, fuel, and spare parts. Each Tiger took 300,000 man-hours to build 10 times longer than an American Sherman, and every mile it moved drained the Reich's dwindling fuel reserves. As one intelligence officer put it, the Tiger doesn't lose in battle, it loses in logistics. General Barnes took that lesson to heart. The US didn't need to outbuild the Tiger in strength, it needed to outthink it. At Aberdeen, as Tiger 712 rested on the test range, the engineers had uncovered something profound. War wasn't won by the mightiest machine, but by the machine that could keep fighting. The Tiger's armor could deflect shells, but not reality. Its brilliance had outpaced its practicality. By the time the tests ended, Jarrett closed his logbook with a final note: a masterpiece of engineering, a failure of strategy. And with that, Tiger 712, once the terror of North Africa, became something else entirely. A monument to the dangers of perfection in the chaos of war. By the time Tiger 712's secrets had been fully dissected at Aberdeen, the Allies understood something the Germans never fully admitted: the Tiger's downfall had never been on the battlefield. It had been born inside the machine itself. The tank's immense power came with a hidden cost, one that would haunt every German campaign that followed, exposing the flaw in battle. In the summer of 1944, as Allied troops stormed the beaches of Normandy, Tigers once again appeared on the horizon. Their presence struck fear into tank crews and infantry alike. Reports from frontline soldiers echoed the same dread felt in Tunisia: a Tiger's in the field. But this time, the Allies came prepared. Thanks to the lessons from Tiger 712 and others like it, Allied strategists had studied every weakness: its slow turret traverse, fragile transmission, and, most importantly, its fuel dependency. Instead of direct confrontation, they used mobility, coordination, and air power to their advantage. Fighter bombers hunted the long, lumbering Tigers from the skies. Fuel convoys and supply lines were targeted relentlessly. Without fuel, even the mightiest tank became nothing more than a bunker. A captured German officer later admitted, "We lost our Tigers not to enemy fire, but to empty fuel tanks." In the hedgerows of Normandy, the Tiger's myth began to fade. The Ardennes and final collapse. The final act came in the winter of 1944, the Battle of the Bulge. It was Hitler's last desperate gamble, an attempt to split the Allied lines and seize the port of Antwerp. Once again, Tigers led the charge through the Ardennes forest. Their guns roared, their armor shrugged off shells, and for a moment, it seemed the nightmare had returned. But behind the German advance was a simple, fatal flaw: fuel. The entire offensive depended on capturing Allied fuel depots. Without them, the Tigers couldn't move. Every kilometer they advanced brought them closer to starvation. When Allied paratroopers destroyed a series of fuel dumps near Stavelot, the offensive began to unravel. Tigers were abandoned on roadsides, their crews setting them alight to prevent capture. Others were left intact, eerily reminiscent of Tiger 712 inches, Tunisia. One American observer noted the irony. The Tiger's greatest enemy wasn't us, it was its own thirst. As the snow fell across Belgium, the once feared symbol of German might stood frozen in place, trapped by its own design. Post-war reflections. After the war, Allied engineers and captured German designers were brought together to analyze what had gone wrong. In interviews and debriefings, men like Dr. Ferdinand Porsche and Henschel's engineers defended their creation. They argued that the Tiger wasn't meant to be practical, it was meant to be unbeatable. A weapon of fear and dominance. But the Allied analysts saw it differently. Colonel Jarrett, reviewing the captured reports years later, wrote, "Perfection in war is a paradox. The more you pursue it, the less it serves you." The Tiger had been too advanced, too heavy, too complex for the conditions it was born into. Germany's industrial base couldn't sustain it. Each Tiger that rolled off the production line drained resources that could have built 5 simpler tanks. And as the Allies built thousands of Shermans and T-34 Germany was perfecting a single masterpiece that could not be maintained. The lesson was clear: quantity, adaptability, and logistics, not brilliance, win wars. Tiger 712's legacy? Today, Tiger 712 still exists. The very same tank captured in Tunisia stands preserved in the US Army Ordnance Museum, a silent monument to both engineering genius and strategic failure. Visitors who see it up close are struck by its sheer presence, the thick armor plates, the monumental gun, the intricate details it is, even now, a machine that commands respect. But standing before it, one also senses a strange melancholy. This was a machine built for domination. Yet it was defeated not by enemy fire, but by exhaustion, by the limits of its own perfection. Generations of military engineers have studied it, not to imitate, but to understand. The tiger taught the world that no weapon, no matter how advanced, can escape the realities of logistics, maintenance, and human endurance. Closing message. In the quiet halls of the museum, the lessons of Tiger 712 linger. It reminds us that in war, as in life, the pursuit of absolute perfection can destroy the very thing it seeks to protect. Power without balance consumes itself. Strength without strategy collapses under its own weight. The Tiger was not a failure of engineering, it was a failure of philosophy. It sought immortality in steel, and instead became a relic of hubris. Beneath the layers of armor and history, one truth remains timeless. Victory belongs not to the strongest, but to the one who endures. And so, in that olive grove near Tunis, where Tiger 712 once stood silent among the trees, its story comes full circle. A monument not to power, but to the wisdom found in its limits.